Good afternoon. This is your new Pan-African show called AfreeQa. Today we have a very interesting guest for you, and we are going to allow him to actually introduce himself to us. Welcome to AfreeQa.
Thank you very much. Introducing myself. My name is Yohannes Zeleke. I was born in Gondar and worked in the Ministry of Culture for several years since I was 17, 16 years old in Addis Ababa, and participating in all kinds of research field works with all kinds of scientists. Eventually I ended up to be an archaeologist. So right now I'm based in Washington, D.C. at the Natural History Museum. I'm a research associate there, and we have several projects in Ethiopia. One of them is the one which I discovered recently with my friend Dr. Alamseged, the Conso site, is the Yalda Tume Rift Valley site. That's where I am.
Beautiful. So, who is Dr. Yohannes? Essentially, are you an anthropologist, an architect,
Archaeologist,
a university lecturer? Which best describes you?
Well, I'm an archaeologist and a research associate at the most prestigious research center in Washington, D.C. So I'm an archaeologist, born archaeologist. That's how I see it, because
that best describes you.
Yeah, I started since I was 14, 15 years old as a tour guide. Yeah. And I would have been a medical doctor easily, but I gave up everything and I ended up doing human origin researches. So that's what my life is.
Beautiful. They say Dr. Yohannes is a man of many hats. Please describe what they mean when they say that.
This was a crazy journalist who traveled with me in the northern part of Ethiopia. About 8 years ago, we had an arrangement with the Ethiopian embassy, with the Ethiopian Airlines, and with the Ministry of Culture and Sport, Tourism, to introduce Ethiopia and Ethiopian tourism. So I organized the American National Tour Associations to come and visit Ethiopia. So the journalist who came with me, he was talking to me about archaeology. I was talking to him about archaeology. He was talking to me about Lalibela, historical archaeology, or Aksum. I was just talking about. We were talking about politics in Russia, in China, in America. So he just felt that, where is Yohannes? Is he one or or multiple nature of a kind? So it was an interesting trip, because Ethiopia was really damaged for several years by war, by famine, and so on. And even our African brothers, they are not promoting Ethiopia because they just feel that it's a country of misery. A lot of misery was there.
But have they ever been here?
Well, some of them, this is the center of the African Union and the United Nations. So when you come to Ethiopia, the country of the Nile and other 7 great rivers and lakes, everything, but still drought is everywhere, but we have a famine. Drought is much worse in Texas or in Arizona, but here it was a famine. There is a cycle of famine in Ethiopia every 10 years, and we don't have a security system to provide food for our citizens, and we are always exposed. And Ethiopians are very much, it's very difficult to describe Ethiopians the way they describe their country, because we are frustrated and we are talking about bad things about our country, ourselves. I remember in 1984, a lot of people were ashamed of being Ethiopian in Europe because there was a famine. And some of them, they said, with their color complexion, we are Cubans. Some of them, they said, we are Arabs. So that trip was a change maker for Ethiopia in this aspect.
So what led to your initial attraction to archaeology?
I was born in Gondar, next to the castle of Gondar. So I was raised doing a tour guide. Then there were archaeologists coming to excavate some of the historic area of that. I was assisting them. Okay. In the meantime, an English scientist by a name called Neville Chittick, who was excavating Aksum. He visited Gondar, and he took me to Aksum the whole summer. I was small. I was about 15 years old. Even my parents were shocked when I decided to go there. So I started to do it, and I started to be attracted. At the same time, I was upgrading my history knowledge, being a tour guide. Then, at one point, Qetselawork Seifu, the historian, Ethiopian historian, he was visiting Gondar, and I was assigned to take him around the historic sites. And he looked at me. I helped him to write some of. In fact, he asked me to jot down all what I told him about the history of Ahmed Grain. Then comes 1974 or 66, the Ethiopian revolution. Things were uncertain. Then I was still a high school student. I moved to Addis, and this gentleman found me there, and he talked to me. I was smoking cigarettes, and a young teenager. He said, "What the hell are you doing here?" That's exactly the word, the translation. That's what he said to me. I told him that I was scared in Gondar, and he talked to me. "Are you going to lose your mind, drinking, smoking? Come to my office." I didn't know that he was the Minister of Culture. I went to his office. Then he invited Mr. Humphrey, a French archaeologist, and he told us that I'm going to send him to France to teach him archaeology. So he will work with you. He called Atobakala Nuguse, who was the director of the archaeology department, and he told him that I have to work as an assistant to scientists, as a field assistant. So the first thing what I did was I went with Humphrey in the summer, in the winter, in Bakramt, to megalithic sites from Tiya all the way to the mountains. And I collected all those information. Then I went with Johansen, the founder of Lucy, to Afar. And I started to learn all the fossils, identifying all the taxons, all the nature of the specimens. Then, in the meantime, after 4 months, I came to Malka Kontare. And I spent 3 months with Shavayo. And I just shaped myself. And I started to say that I'm myself an archaeologist. And there was no an archaeologist of this field among the Ethiopians in that building, in the Ministry of Culture. So I was privileged to take the advantage, and I was learning hard. When I got to university, it didn't take me much time to be an archaeologist because I already trained on the field with the scientists.
Right.
So that's how. So archaeology is not, in fact, a subject when I see it now. It's a way of life. If you don't feel the earth, the soil, the dirt, you smell it, you see it, that's how you do it. So it became a way of life. So it's something different from other subjects. It's an adventure.
Right, it's also outdoors, you're in nature.
Yes.
Could you enlighten us on your work on what archaeological materials were taken from Magdala?
Well, that's an interesting question. When I was at the British Museum, I used to work for the British Museum sometimes, and I used to work at Frank House, where all the collections are displayed. So I asked Jill Cook, who is the head of that department, to give me the archival materials of all those what was taken from the Magdala and Napier expedition. So we don't see a lot of archaeological materials of back to the fossils, but we see some historical archaeological materials which are belong to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. So there are over 1,200 items. Most of them are, 400 of them are books, and they have sistrums, drums, and paintings. We didn't know that how much is more because a lot of the soldiers also took and they sold it in the street of London. So some of them were brought to Kenya because most of the Indians who came from Kenya to help as a foot soldier for the British Army, they took a lot to Kenya as well. The Magdala antiquities are spread out from England to India. It's not only in London. So what we know in London is that was given to Queen Victoria. So that's in the right custodian. So we know the numbers.
Yeah.
So those are great, great materials which really robbed from our country, which should be come back or returned to Ethiopia. But on the other hand, Ethiopia should be ready for that as well. There should be enough museums, there should be enough curators, there should be enough writers and researchers. You cannot simply bring cultural heritage and move it and put it in a store. It requires a lot of requirements to keep them alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to dedicate your life to the preservation of cultural heritage in Africa?
Well, you see, Africa is the cradle of mankind. We are all Africans. I heard very many times President Clinton said, at the end of the day, we are all Africans. That's a very speculative, sexy language, because you can't say that. But the way they wrote the story is, somewhere in primitive Africa, in the jungle, an imperfect face were born, and when they arrived in Europe, they have a perfect face. They are called Neanderthals. That's how they described it. And I said, this is a shame, because humans are equal in brain chemistry.
Right.
Morphology of a face is, it is the result of a protein, it's an environment. All this dominates our facial nature. But humans, Ethiopians left, or Africans left from Africa to Central Asia, from Central Asia to India, from India back to Siberia. From the Siberia arrived in America 12,000 years ago. So we can acknowledge that Ethiopians or Africans are the ancestor of all humans. So this distorted history of Africa is always worrying me. Therefore, I was always talking in every opportunity I got that we are Africans, we are humans. Africa means humans and humanity. The rest are byproducts. You're sorry to say that.
Wow. Can you tell us about African legend tours?
African legend tours. You see, I was the president of the African Travels Association in the United States. We created that association to promote Africa. We have the Great Zimbabwe, we have a lot of sites in South Africa, we have the Great Egypt, we have Ethiopian obelisks and historic churches, and we have all kinds of fossils from East Africa, starting from Assab area, all the way to South Africa, on the rift of the East Africa, all human origins, all animals. The ancestors of the European mammoths, for example, Dinotherium. It's a kind of an elephant, or the Neanderthal, a kind of pig family. All was found in Africa. So why, there was, when George Bush became a president, Colin Powell was designed an African tour is very important, and to bring more Africans, more Europeans and Americans to visit Africa. So I started to develop African legend tours, and I promoted the African Travels Association that way. I package people to come and visit Africa. We organized multiple destinations, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Kenya, Egypt for the pyramid, Ethiopia for the northern historic route, and Kenya for the safaris. So that's how it makes it a legend.
What was the nature of your special participation in the NTA Ethiopian product development trip?
Well, we discussed with the ambassador of Ethiopia, Grima Birru, for several months. Then he asked me to develop a marketing principle and promoting Ethiopia. So me as a member of NTA, we convinced the leadership that if you see Ethiopia, we can market it properly. So I brought some journalists and mainstream American Travel Association members. So we were hosted by the Ethiopian Airlines, and by the different Ethiopian tour travel associations, and by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. So I just want to see Ethiopia, not only the historic roots of northern, but we have people in the south. We have the Dorze culture of beautiful dresses. We have the nature. And I just designed that. We brought them, and really the Ethiopian tourism increased immediately by 15% until the Erecha comes. Ethiopia was on the high level of the African tourism. It was the future of tourism. Still, it has the potential.
How do you think we could actually make it?
First thing is, what is tourism? Tourism is not the pyramid or Acropolis or Aksum obelisk. Tourism is security. First, you have to have the right security. Second, you have to have the facilities. People come to eat food, to get, from the society that runs in the speed of light. They want to be away, run away, and stay here. So you should have a good restaurant, a clean area, good hotels. As long as it's there, someone, for example, if you take a group of elderly Americans or British or someone, African, to Lalibela, they cannot walk all that.
Yeah, they can.
They'll just move and see Beta Medahinalam or Beta Georgis. After that, they'll just enjoy the beautiful scenery of that area. So we have to make sure that we have the products properly allocated in budget, standardized hotels. Whenever I travel to Ethiopia, I used to bring sometimes bed sheets because sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes I have to bring soaps. Sometimes I have to bring screwdrivers to fix something. So right now, in the last 20 years, there is a progress. Right. But when you invite 1 million people to come to Ethiopia, whereas Addis Ababa is only 37,000 beds in our hotels, or Lalibela is only 2,000 maximum, or not 2,000, 1,500. So you have to make sure that you invite 1 million people. It means there should be at least,
Any of our historic routes wheelchair accessible?
Not very much. No,
so that
not at all. That's
is
one of the most important part of tourism is you need accessibility. You need small vehicles that can take. People are coming really to meet their God. It's very spiritual ways. When they come to Ethiopia, most of them. I remember I brought a group of people to Aksum and to the administrator of the city of Aksum, the mayor of Aksum. This is what they said to him. You know that you have the most precious heritage, what everyone is looking from all over the world. Guess what? That's the Ark of the Covenant. But walking through Beta Maria, through the St. Mary Church, to where the custodian of the Ark of the Covenant is so dirty, it is grassy, it is bushy, and they're disappointed. In fact, it was our initiative to put the cobblestones where today is. Aksum is unique. It's one day when the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian Muslims, the Ethiopian other Christians agreed to show just a part of the Ark of the Covenant, Aksum and Ethiopia will be the most visited.
Flooded.
Yeah, more than Mecca, Medina,
absolutely.
more than Jerusalem. So we have, Ethiopia is the custodian of all religions, you see. It's the custodian of God belongings. It is the spirit of Africa. That's what Ethiopia is.
Absolutely. Oh, that sounds so beautiful. You're generally recognized as a licensed tour guide with the highest qualifications in archaeology, history, and anthropology, both for Washington, D.C., Israel, Europe, and Africa.
Yeah, I jumped there and here. That's what's happening. But, you see, I never stop learning. When you study archaeology, if you simply focus on the stone tools, you don't have any philosophy, it means. You talk about, it's like a potter who made his potter. But archaeology gives you a knowledge of a brain. You see, we have products of human origin, okay? For example, it takes the skull of Lucy, or Homo erectus, or Homo sapiens, or Australopithecus. All this doesn't have anything except skulls. We found them, those are very important, but they don't tell anything because they are dead.
Right.
They don't have a brain, they don't have an eye, they don't have anything. Simply a fossil cast. These are sediment casts. But what we learn from that, we have the archaeology products. To interpret that empty brain, we use the material culture. We identify the knowledge of geometry by seeing the way they nap the stone tools. We understand the nature of the tool use, the survival mechanism, the environment through the products. Okay. For example, you take Albert Einstein. His brain is preserved. Or you take Abraham Lincoln. His brain is preserved. Does that brain tell you anything? Not. They are dead. Does that fossil tell you anything? No. Does the skull of Einstein tell you anything? No. But his work, the product of his brain, theory of relativism, is the most important one. That's what it is when you study archaeology. We are describing from that skull the product of the brain by calling them material culture. So that's the connection.
What is the advantage of preserving, like when you said they preserved Einstein's brain?
Yeah.
What do they get out of preserving his brain?
Well, this is, for example, Abraham Lincoln was shot and killed.
Right.
So he had a brain hemorrhage. They took out the brain and preserved it. Okay. It is at the American Military Academy Hospital. It's on display. So what they are trying to say is, this guy, he worked hard to save the Union. He died.
Saving the Union.
Saving the Union, yeah. Okay. So we need to preserve his brain to tell that how much he suffered to save this Union. That's what they said about him. About Albert Einstein, he is the greatest of all time scientist. So they try to see, saving his brain, this brain shouldn't be dead because he was there to create us the new knowledge that took us all the way to the moon today, all the way to the Mars. So they have historical significance. But on the other hand, the most important thing is his works, his writings, his philosophy. Those are very important. So that's what historical archaeology will give you.
Can you describe your teaching experiences at Addis Ababa University and the US? What are the differences between Ethiopian and American university students?